So this is a good tool, like I said, just a frequency analyzer, just to get it in the ballpark quick without having to, like you want to trust your ears ultimately, but this will help you get there quick. So what I've done over the years, whatever, I found some EQ curves that have worked well in my mixes, and and I've cross-referenced them since with some pre-processed drum samples that sound great in mixes, or like some isolated hits on processed records and things like that to kind of compile like an average EQ curve. And this is like I've saved this as my EQ, and this is a more recent one. But this is an EQ curve of a kick drum that normally works, as a good starting point for my mixes. So you can kind of cross reference. Like sometimes your point of reference, if you've been hearing a really high endy kick drum all day, then sometimes you're like, okay, that you're more okay with too much high end. But this will help you get in the ballpark really quick. And this is drums is helpful, but this is really helpful on the guitars in my opinion. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Do here is get the level similar here, so I can compare the EQ and see what I got going on. This is a tried and true EQ curve for a kick drum for me. It looks like I'm rocking more high end than I normally would. And I know like FabFilter has this built in, right? Like a frequency analyzer type of thing. See, it looks like here I can cut some more mids down. That's a pretty crazy amount to cut there, but what frequency was that? That was around 700, 740. Let's pull that down, see what happens. I'm not opposed to using even another EQ. It's definitely closer EQ. Like I said, this is a proven EQ curve that I've found works well in my mixes. So, and I can, like I said, I can share these things with you guys too.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's just a shortcut. Like I said, I mean, like I said, you want to trust your ears, but a lot of times it's like, especially when you're starting out, like you could be way off, and waste so much time. But these. I'd say the snare. There's a snare that's worked. EQ curve. Let me check my snare, see where I'm at comparatively. I don't need a C4, so let's grab it.
So just out of curiosity, so when you do this for your own mixes, your prep process, I'm guessing since you're not talking, how long does it normally take you?
Oh, this is super quick.
Yeah, it seems like it's something that you've got down to just a science.
Yeah, it's just like, and I've explained it to some of my students before when I do the education sessions. Like, when you first start typing on the keyboard, you have to look at it, and it takes you forever to type a paragraph or whatever, or an email. But then after a while, you're just like on autopilot. I mean, this is how mixing has, becomes for, most of the professionals I think or whatever, like I don't have to look at these anymore really, to know if I'm in the ballpark. A lot of times I like, somebody will send me a track and I'll be like, yeah, I need to cut down 12K. I need to, like in my head, it's just like, I've internalized the language or whatever, the audio, I guess there's intuition involved at a certain point or whatever as to what needs to come up and down and stuff like that. And even with the tone, I'm not even looking at numbers oftentimes, I'm just kind of just on autopilot doing it. So, but at first, I mean, it's, as I mean, you have to, there's a learning curve involved. And it's like, a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm just going to, I've heard so many bands nowadays, it's inexpensive to buy the gear and, like, hey, we're just going to record and mix ourselves, and I want you to master it. And I'm like, okay, I'm like, that's definitely possible, but there's way more of a learning curve, and a lot of people realize. I'm like, dude, you're going to need years to tune your ears to get a good result, or you're going to have to work on this thing forever, and unless you just there are some people out there who are just gifted at this thing, but most people have to work on it for some time to get there.
Yeah, well, I just want everyone to understand that, like, while you're going through and you're explaining it at like every little detail of it, but like in real life, this is like a pretty. It kind of like when you watch John Douglas editing drums, it's just like a thing that you have down to a T.
Yeah.
So it's a quick thing, and just part of the prep process.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like I'm explaining, so it's kind of slow. It seems tedious and whatever, but it's really, it's really quite simple, especially the way I do it. It's definitely. I mean, unless I've got almost nothing in my chains and my signal chains and all that kind of stuff, and it's not hard. I mean, like I said, it blows my mind. Some people have so many problems with stuff, and it's just I don't think it's as hard as some people make it out to be. I think even when I started, I think that a lot of people think with the recording and mixing in general, like, so we're doing nail the mix, so we're focusing on like I mentioned before to L, like mixing is just all it is organizing and putting things where they're supposed to be, frequency wise and volume wise. Obviously before you mix, you need to take care of all the timing and the actual physical where the audio is and stuff like that. But that's all it is. I mean, it's a matter of taking the time and it's like cleaning your room or whatever. Things are supposed to be in a certain spot, and you put things in that spot, and or try to find a spot for it. And then once you do it over and over, you memorize where the stuff's supposed to be. And that's kind of how the mixing happens. Still got a lot of 200 hertz in there. So this isn't exactly the same, and I don't necessarily need it to be exactly the same, but it's in the ballpark, If somebody gives you a snare, like I said, I've loaded. Oh, I made a mistake there, but that's fine. But if somebody gives you a snare and it sounds like this, I've literally had snare drums that sound like, like this. Like, what is going on? You can use these tools to kind of get it back and to counteract this crazy EQ that they send it to you with, quick without having to like rack your brain and, guess, it takes the guesswork out of it. If they gave you sounding like that, then you're like, okay, you can look at it and be like, oh, this has got loads of mids. Let me pull this down, like. Automatically better, a lot of less insane. But this is the process I use with the Contortionist. Like I said, it's just a kind of I probably use these either my internal knowledge of this EQ curve or whatever to get stuff in the ballpark of this, and I've got this for toms, things like that too.